Spider-Man Brand New Day. What a movie, man. It feels like it's been a long time in the making, and I finally got to see it earlier today. And holy crap, man. Was it amazing. I thought this movie was a lot of fun. I love the way that the suit looks on screen. I love the way that Spider-Man moves and acts in this movie. And overall, I would go as far to say it's the best Spider-Man movie we've seen from Tom Holland so far. I also really liked all the guest appearance and the interactions between Peter and those characters. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down everything that I liked, everything that I disliked, questions I have, and my overall thoughts and opinions on the movie. Also, before I start, let me give a quick spoiler warning. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you don't want to get spoiled, click off the video right now. So without further ado, let me present. If you've been living under a rock, this movie follows the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, and Peter Parker dealing with the aftermath of the decision he made at the end of No Way Home, choosing to make everyone forget who Peter Parker was for the greater good. This includes his friends, family, and the love of his life. And in this movie, he's also just being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man we know him to be. And I think that that's one thing that makes this movie so great compared to the rest of the Spider-Man movies. No crutch from Tony Stark. He's not in Europe or outer space. He's just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, fighting crime because it's literally the only thing he can do in this movie. He has become more Spider-Man than he has Peter Parker, and that's the overarching dilemma of the whole movie, I feel like. His secret identity is the only thing tying him back to his dear Aunt May, the love of his life, and his best friend. And in this movie, I felt super immersed in the New York atmosphere compared to the other Spider-Man movies we've seen with Tom Holland. I think that one way the movie achieves this very well is when Spider-Man saves civilians mid-fight scene. It feels overall like good world building and seems more realistic than things we've seen in the past. Another way I think the movie executes this very well is the montage at the beginning showing all the villains he's faced since we last saw him. I'm sure this was just a bunch of fan service, seeing that it's only the covers that were recreated and not the actual comic book stories. But I personally didn't really mind it, and I liked seeing Scorpion, Tombstone, and the Hand, and it was pretty visually appealing. Another thing that I thought was really good was how well the Punisher highlighted Spider-Man in this movie. Jon Bernthal and Tom Holland had great chemistry in this movie, and I got a lot of laughs out of just the Punisher. I also appreciated the emotional scenes, and I can see why they did them, because since Spider-Man Brand New Day is PG-13 and more of a movie for families, I could see how this would be the first time the general audience has seen Jon Bernthal's performance as the Punisher. I also really appreciated Dr. Banner's appearance in this movie. And while I do think the MCU did him dirty once again, his fight scene with Spider-Man and the Punisher was probably the best part of the whole film in my opinion. I also really enjoyed Yelena's guest appearance. I got a good chuckle out of all of those jokes as well, and I really liked Spider-Man's feet. Yeah, this picture is really funny to me. However, while all these guest appearances were great, I think that Tom Holland really takes the cake on this one. I mean, obviously he does play fucking Spider-Man, but you know what I mean. You would think for a movie where he spends most of his time in the Spider-Man costume, he would have a harder time expressing Peter's character, but it's actually better somehow. He has all of his cheesy one-liners, he breaks the tension with a goofy joke, like in Yelena's office, and he truly succeeds at being the both compassionate and lonely Spider-Man that we need to see in this film. Unlike all of the rest of the Spider-Man costumes we've seen in the MCU, you can see through the lenses partially of this one. So Tom Holland is doing a lot of acting with his eyes, and it's stuff like this that makes Destin's Spider-Man movie better than the last three we've seen. Speaking of Destin Daniel Cretton, his persistence to keep things like physical stunts, a real suit, not using very much CGI for the fight scenes, are what make this the best looking Spider-Man movie we've gotten so far. It's refreshing to see a level of realism both on and off screen with the Spider-Man movie. And I hope they keep these principles going forward. It's really nice to see Peter go through some sort of brutal conflict internally that isn't him feeling guilty over the death of another character. This movie isolates Peter from everyone close to him that he cares about and forces him to realize that they've moved on without him. And now it's time to address the elephant in the room. Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. There are some things I disliked about it that I'll get into later, but I really enjoyed her performance as Jean Grey. I don't know too much about the X-Men, but I really loved her performance as Jean Grey. I thought her backstory was compelling and super sad. when Damage Control kidnaps her sister, and then her sister has to mind control her to get her to run away. It's a super emotional scene. And then by the end, when you realize what VMAX means, and that was the last thing that her sister saw and sent a message to Jean about before she died. I read a lot of comics, but I don't know much about Jean Grey or the X-Men really as a whole. But I thought her origin story was pretty great. I also really loved the ending. The scene where Peter is leaving the hospital and there's this surreal moment where he realizes that what he's doing as Spider-Man is amazing and he shouldn't be doing it alone. Another thing I loved about both the ending and movie just as a whole, it started open-ended and it ended open-ended. And I feel like the execution on that was just great. When Ned and Peter do the handshake and then Ned exclaims Peter, I really want to know what he meant by that. Did he suddenly remember who Peter Parker was after doing the handshake? Or did he put the dots together in his brain that MJ said that Spider-Man's name was Peter and he figured out that that was Spider-Man? Who knows? I guess we'll know in like 3 or 4 years again. Anyways, moving on to my cons for this movie. I actually don't have very many, I'm gonna be completely honest. So I'm gonna try to get through this as quick as I can. Oh my god, there was so much product placement in this movie, it was breathtaking. There is literally a scene that looks like that it was stripped from an actual BMW ad and then put into the movie. And it really takes me out of the fight scene with the tank. Product placement is something I've never really cared about in movies, but geez Louise, man, there is so much. BMW, Takis, Liquid IV, and that's just a few, man. That's more of just a nitpicky thing. I don't actually really care all that much. There was just a lot of it, and it was very, 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 very obvious. Another thing I really didn't like is how irredeemable Jean Grey is. Like I said before, I'm not really an X-Men or Jean Grey fan, but surely she cannot be this menacing in the comics. Like, there was no need for her to mind control MJ and then do that like 6-minute scene where he pretends to be MJ and makes out with Spider-Man just to rub it in his face that she doesn't remember him. How does that pertain to finding your sister, Mrs. Grey? Also, when she mind controls that old man and walks him into oncoming traffic just to swap out of his body before he gets hit by a taxi, all of that was unneeded when it came to taking your sister back from Damage Control. Let me be honest. Another thing that I really didn't like is how dirty they did Hulk once again. I appreciated that they incorporated him into the story, and that was my favorite fight scene in the entire movie. But man, that's just a terrible way to go out. I'm pretty sure that the writers didn't know what they wanted to do with him after the fight scene, and so that's why they send Dr. Banner to a mental institution after the fight scene, and he's never heard from for the rest of the movie. And that was everything I liked and disliked of Spider-Man Brand New Day. Overall, I thought the movie was pretty great. There are still things that could be improved upon, but I love the comic it's based on. I just wish Daredevil had showed up. And I think it sets up some great stories to tell within the MCU about Spider-Man. Maybe in the next movie he would have the black suit and we could see him with Black Cat. I think that would be very interesting considering that MJ doesn't really want to be with Peter right now. Anyways, if you like the video, and if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. I'm actually a really huge comic fan. I've been collecting comics since I was a little kid, and this is my first time making a video about an IP that I'm really interested in that isn't just The Walking Dead. So if you want to see more comic book stuff, please consider subscribing and leave a like on this video. And yeah, see ya.